name is Owen Brooks. I'm with the Smith Robinson Museum and Cultural Center. Oral History Project this morning has as our guest, Mrs. Frankye Johnson. And Mrs. Johnson, I'd like to begin by asking you if I have your permission to do this interview.
You have my permission, sir.
All right, Ms. Johnson, let us then go forward. We'd like to have a little information about your background. That means tell us where you were born, tell us something about your parents, what they did, and then a little about your early schooling. We'll go on from there.
Okay, well, I was born Frankye May Adams, and was born in a little town called Pocahontas, Mississippi, to parents, so Frank Adams and Gussie Merchant Adams. Merchant was her maiden name. And I went to school. My first schooling was church school, actually, in a small town, Pocahontas. I guess my first school was Cedar Grove, I believe it was.
That's the elementary school, Cedar Grove?
Yes, and that was the first school that I attended. Then I attended I believe, Pine Grove Elementary School, so all these schools. My earlier education were in church schools, basically.
Church schools.
Mm-hmm. And I suspect when I was somewhere 5th or 6th grade, I went to a public school, Summer Hill Elementary School.
Tell us about your dad. Was he from Pocahontas?
Yes, my dad was from Pocahontas, and my dad, I am the 4th daughter of Frank and Gussie, and they actually said,
no brothers?
Yes, I do have brothers. I'm the 4th of 7 children.
4th of 7 children.
Right. But my mother and father, Frank and Gussie, had 4 daughters. I'm the 4th daughter. Right. They separated, divorced. But anyway, they departed when I was very, very young. Actually, when I was a baby, so I don't know much about it. I get to know much about my father. So I grew up basically in a single-parent household with my moms.
All right. And what did Mom do?
Mom was domestic, and she actually was a sharecropper. She rented land and pretty much farmed. Yes, she pretty much farmed her own land for a time, along with my uncle, who was always there as a father image. Pretty much I know my uncle as my father image, and he always lived nearby in Pocahontas with us, and I helped my mama farm the land.
Okay. And there were 4 girls at home with you? No, there were, yes, that's right.
There were 7 of us.
7 of you altogether?
Yeah, four of us by the first marriage.
Oh,
and
right.
my mama did remarry at some point when I was probably around 5, I believe.
All right. Okay. And you went to, first school was Cedar Grove.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then you went, how many grades? Do you remember how many grades you went to Cedar Grove?
I remember doing my 1st and 2nd grade there.
Okay.
And I think when I was in 3rd grade, I went to Pine Grove Elementary School.
Pine Grove. Was that in Pocahontas?
That's also in Pocahontas.
Pine Grove.
On 49, Highway 49.
Okay. Elementary. Okay. All right, then what's the first public school you went to?
Summer Hill.
Summer Hill. Where is that?
In Clinton.
Okay. Summer or Sumner?
Sumner.
Summer?
Sumner.
Sumner. Okay, Sumner Hill. And what were the grade levels at Sumner Hill?
1st through 12th.
Oh, 1 to 12. Okay. So, and did you go to the 12th grade there?
No, I actually, when I was in 9th grade, actually approaching my 9th grade year, my mom moved from Pocahontas to Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
And I did my high school at Brinkley High School in Jackson.
How old were you? Do you remember when you moved to Jackson?
Remember we moved to Jackson, probably it was around 1960.
Oh, right.
I remember was about 15 years old, I think.
15. That's good enough. And you went to Jim Hill?
No, Brinkley.
Brinkley, I'm sorry.
Sam and Brinkley.
Oh, good, very good. Did you go to the 12th grade at Brinkley?
I went through 9th through 12th at Brinkley.
All right. Brinkley High School, 9th to 12th grade. All right. And what was going on during that time? Usual stuff? Football
Well, the
games?
usual stuff, and I think probably the most unusual stuff. The usual stuff, till I probably was about a junior in high school. The usual stuff. I was very involved in school, the regular school activities, football, cheerleading, and very active in high school. But I think in my junior year, when things began to change in terms of our curriculum, that was probably the most interesting thing that I began to hear our history teacher talk to us about a word that was really strange to me, communism.
Oh,
and
very interesting.
Yes, and I wasn't sure what that meant, you know. And I was just curious about it. You know, this was the first time that that word had been introduced to us, and it seemed to be brought to us in some seriousness, or something that we should know. And I wasn't clear on what it was about, but Cleveland Donald, my god brother, I asked him about what it was.
He was in school with you?
Yeah, he was in school with me. He was
fellow
also
student?
public. Yeah, he was in Brinkley with me, and he was very smart young man. So he introduced me to, he told me that things were happening in Mississippi, and he told me about the Freedom Riders and all of that stuff. And actually that was how I got introduced to the movement, by way of Cleveland Donald. Yeah, so he was, I guess, my first educator in terms of the movement and things going on in Mississippi. His father was very active in the NAACP.
His father was very active in the NAA.
Yes, his father was very active. I had Cleveland Donald Sr. Yeah.
And what did that result in terms of your involvement? Where did you go from there?
I got involved with Cleveland and have mobilized students at Brinkley during the summer, the spring of 1963. Cleveland asked me to help in mobilizing kids, and I do remember, my memory fails me on the details, but I do remember having started going to some meetings with Cleveland. Sometimes meetings were held up at our church. And just at that time, being very young, you know, I was probably more of a listener and eager to know and eager to be involved.
Right.
Yeah. And
you went to meetings at your church? Or which particular churches do you remember?
I believe our first meetings probably did go to Cage Chapel. Yeah.
Cage Chapel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And seemed like that there were meetings also at Cleveland. Mr. Donald, the senior house, yeah. Yeah.
Now, who was this now?
Cleveland Donald Sr.,
His father.
who was very, very involved in NAACP.
Meetings at his house?
Yeah, I do recall meetings at his house. But in terms of details, all I know, I've been trying to wreck my mind. That's why I have to speak to Cleveland and just find out exactly what were, you know, the issues and that caused us to walk out of that high school in the May of 1963. All I know is that I have mobilized a bunch of kids, and here we were walking down Livingston Road on our way to downtown Jackson. And
did he explain the boycott that had been going on in Jackson in 62 and 63?
Yes, he did talk to me about things like that, you know. And but I'm just not clear on the exact incident of while we were walking there.
The high school student?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And was he sort of the student leader?
Yes, Cleveland actually was. Cleveland was the
Okay.
student leader. Mhm.
Did you become familiar with the NAACP Youth Council?
I became familiar with the NAACP Youth Council, and I became a very active participant in the NAACP Youth Council. Pearlina Lewis was also our youth leader. Pearlina Lewis, Willie Letton. Willie Letton was not from Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
but he came. I know that he was from out of town and that he was here often, and he helped mobilize us.
Now, what was his name?
Willie Letton.
Lutton.
Mhm.
Okay.
And at some point, because I became very active involved, I was going to meetings regularly. I was made the regional youth secretary at the NAACP, and I was secretary for Jackson branch.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had gone to one of those conventions, I believe we were at, I do recall having gone to Morehouse College
okay.
for a conference there. And I believe it was at Morehouse that I was appointed to be the regional youth secretary at the NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
And so I represented the youth from Jackson along with Cleveland. I do recall having gone to a conference in Chicago. And at some point, we were the Jackson chapter branch. I don't know if they call us chapters or branches, but the Jackson youth were actually given some kind of a certificate, and because we didn't have, I guess maybe, I know I brought the certificate back, let's put it like that. I brought the certificate back, and I kept that certificate. And somewhere during my years of leaving Mississippi,
Don't say you lost.
yes, I did.
Oh,
yes,
no.
I did. And I regret that to
Oh,
this day.
that's not
But
good.
we were given, and I don't know how, if that was ever recorded somewhere, but our
What were
youth-
you given the certificate for?
I believe it was just our active involvement, because we were very active here in Jackson. The Jackson youth were very active. We stayed that whole summer of '63,
Mm-hmm.
and that might have been in '64, I believe, when we were given that certificate. But the whole summer of '63, we were very active. Our core group of us stayed very active. When we first marched out of the high schools, there were thousands of a big number, when we first marched out of high school. But somewhere along the way, many of those that marched out of high school on that day.
Was that around the time of Medgar's death?
No, actually, when we marched
Before?
out of high school, that was before
Before.
Megan's death. And it seemed like, I thought about it as I was on my way here. And just, I guess from having spoken to you last week, I thought, you said you wanted to talk about Megan. I said, you know what? It was only really a short period that I knew Megan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I knew Megan from when I initially got involved. And when I initially got involved, it had to be somewhere during my junior year,
Okay,
going
high
to
school.
meetings during my junior year. So I didn't know Megan leading up to, June 12th.
Oh, right.
But it seemed like that I had known Megan really all my life. And I was just really amazed when I think about it, how short a time that I actually didn't know him. So
Mm-hmm.
probably couldn't be longer than a year, because as I say, I do remember having gotten involved in '62 in my junior year, having gotten introduced to the movement by way of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after,
Woolworths? Do you remember the Woolworths sit-in?
yes, I do remember
You
the
remember
Woolworth
that?
sit-in. I remember the Woolworth sit-in. And I remember some of us attempting, there was the Woolworth sit-ins, but after that sit-in, I remember having gone there with a group of young people and got spit on once by a white woman, and she looked around and said, "Nigga, just get out of here and leave me alone." She was hysterical, as if we were there to do something personally to her.
Sure.
And I do remember her having spat, but in terms of the actual, I was not a part, but I do remember, the first Woolworth City,
Right.
and Pearlina was part of that.
Yes, Pearlina was.
Was part of that.
Mm-hmm. they declared at Easter, there was a boycott on the stores downtown.
Right.
You
right.
remember that?
I do remember the boycotts on the stores downtown. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Now, folks were getting locked up. Were you aware of well, you were aware of that, right?
Well, I remember the first time that we went out of high school. The first time that we went out of high school, then we began to, protest and march. I remember the meetings started being held at the Masonic Temple, going to a lot of mass meetings at the Masonic Temple,
Right.
and marching from the Masonic Temple downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those are the incidents that I remember. And having during that year, I was 63.
63.
Having gone to jail at least, I think the second time after high school, I went back. There was some big mass march downtown, and then there was another time that I went back, was locked up at the fairground.
Oh, yeah.
The third time that I was involved in a mass march was actually after Mega. I did not attend Mega's funeral because I was incarcerated. And at that time...
You were in jail at that
Yes, because we went out to protest.
Oh,
once,
yeah.
That night, that terrible, terrible night that I recall that night. We had just left a meeting, and it might have, that church, there was a church here.
Yeah.
Near Jackson State Fair. Is it on, I don't know if it's Pearl Street. There was a church there that we used to meet regularly. And that church, that was, Mega had actually been at a mass meeting that night. And Mega would always make sure that the youth, that he was always very conscious about our safety. And at any meeting, Mega never left a meeting until the last of us were safely in a car somewhere to get home. And that particular night, Mega probably would have brought me home himself. I remember him being concerned about how we were going to get home, and I remember him saying that he would get me home. But Pearlina lived near me, so I did come home in a car with her. And about 15 minutes after I had gotten home, the phone rang, and it was Pearlina on the phone, and she says they killed Mega, and I remember just becoming very hysterical, and my mom woke up, and it's like, what's wrong? And yeah, it was just it was just very shocking. It was the first time, even though people had gotten killed, there were people had in the movement had gotten killed prior to Mega, but it was the first time that really touched me. It touched it straight up, it touched.
Oh, that was close to home.
It was close to home, and plus that, for me, Mega became like a father, the father that I never really had, and someone I really could look up to. And his compassion and caring about us whenever we were locked up. Mega, I do recall Mega always being concerned and stressing to the ministers that you have to get these children. You got to get those children out of jail. You know what they do to those children. You got to get those children out of jail. And so he was real adamant about us not spending long times in jail, because even after the fairground, they had actually started taking some of us, those of us who had reached the age of 18, and taking us out and putting us down at the city, in the county jail downtown there. Yeah. So I do recall him actually having come down there once when we were locked up down, and I believe Jerry probably was locked up with me. It was about 7 of us.
Jerry?
Yeah, 7 of us women were in some cells down there, and they had also, Jesse Morris had been locked up down there, because Jesse became our section leader, he in Jackson.
Oh, no, I didn't know
Yes, he was. That's who I remember most, Jesse Harris.
Jesse Harris?
Yeah, Jesse Harris became our section leader. And they had locked Jesse up, and they had actually put him in the holding pen. And when they had put us there, the women, they were trying to make us, I guess, become snitches and say, well, we get the leader, that Jesse, And people like him were making us do the things that we were doing. And I do remember us torturing us. And well, and they would tell us horror stories about some woman that had hung herself, and they would tell us ghost stories about how this woman, you could see her all, every night, and the things that they would do to us, if we did not snitch. And then late at night sometimes they would come around with those big flashlights. It was hot too, it was hot, and we'd be there, having to cover ourselves with those army blankets, and just to keep from, to cover our bodies, because they would come around
Now, was that at the fairgrounds, or was that in the county jail?
No, that was at the county jail.
At the county jail?
At the fairground, I actually felt safer at the fairground because the numbers, we seemed to kind of gather around and protect each other. And I actually felt my fear really came at the county jail, because that's where we were often threatened, terrible things they were going to do to us, at the county jail. And one time they did take us down to show us Jesse in this cell, and they had beaten him up. And they said, well, you see what happened to him, that's what we're going to do to you. Yeah, they had beaten him up pretty bad, and I do recall them having, serving him food through some little hole there, and I don't believe they even had a toilet in there, some hole, I guess. They did. I know it was a terrible scene.
Bad conditions.
Yeah, bad conditions. And the worst one was we had to fight with the water bugs just to use the stall. I mean, big, huge water bugs. Yeah, huge roaches. So I do remember us having to fight with the water bugs just to sit on the stool. And now, during the summer of '64, I was arrested and taken. The summer of '64, I believe, and I don't know exactly what incident it was, but I was arrested, and when they were arresting us at that time, when they arrested us when we walked out of the schools, they didn't have enough paddy wagons to put us in, so we were put in garbage trucks. We were put in garbage trucks. But during one of those, and I get my time mixed up, it was '64, I kept going back, so it's kind of really hard. I'd say one of these days I'm going to take time and go get my records and just see the dates of when it was. But on one of those times of being taken to the fairground, I do recall we sat there, and this must have been in July, because it was very, very hot, and I was so accustomed to getting locked up whenever we went out to demonstrate. It was obvious we were going to get locked up, So you see this pad that I have now, I've always been a writer, so I've always taken a pen and something to write with, and so I had taken along a writing pad, and we were sitting there waiting to be booked at the fairground in the paddy wagons, and it was very, very hot. So I'd taken my pad that I had and was sitting there and fanning with it, and it fell out of my hand onto the ground. And so I asked the officer if he would, hand me my pad. So he just looked at me, very redneck and evil. He just looked at me. And so my naivete, I truly, well, he's not going to reach it. I'll get down and get it myself. So I got down on the paddy wagon, and when I started, to get back into the paddy wagon, he hit me across my back with his billy club. And it was the first time that I'd actually been hit by a man, because I did not grow up with a male to.
In the wagon? You were in the
wagon?
And
I was climbing back into the paddy wagon. I had gotten down to pick up my writing pad.
Pick up your writing pad.
And I was climbing back into the wagon, and then he took his really bash, he went across my back. And that's when I realized that even though we were taught nonviolent tactics, that I had this very human instinct to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my initial reaction, that I had been hit, so I wanted to hit back. And I am really grateful this day that I had the camaraderie of my fellow marchers, because they got me and pulled me back, because he had cocked his rifle, you know.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, he had cocked his rifle, and they were, I can remember hearing them, because he hit me so hard, and we were really was shocking. And I probably was in and out of shock. I did not go out, but I do remember just hearing these voices saying, Frankie, no, because I actually was going to fight back. That was just an instinct.
Yeah, reflex action.
Yeah, it was a reflex action. And I remember people just, the men that grabbed me and pulled me back into the way. And I remember hearing them saying, no, don't do it, because I was true. He had cocked his gun, and probably had they not pulled me back there, he probably would have shot me. He probably would have shot me. And that thing just really stayed with me. That thing stayed with me, and it really, the first time that I'd been hit by a male, and the first male that hit me was a redneck. And that was really profound for me. And what preceded that, they actually let me, they didn't bother to, give me any medical attention. And at some point, we sat in, when they would bring us in, sometimes we'd sit in that paddy wagons hours, because there was a lot of us, and so it took them forever to book us. So sometimes we would just sit there for hours, waiting to be booked. And having sat there, and then after they had gotten into us booked, I remember them putting me on some stretcher, because I had complained, my back was hurting. I have a bad back today as a result of that. And it swelled up like really bad. So later on that night, somebody did get in touch. I don't know who it was. Somebody did get in contact with my mom. They did take me to, I believe, the university. But the doctors looked at me there, and they said, oh, she just got a little bruise, and just
that was it, huh?
Yeah, that was it. It wasn't until years later that, I started still having chronic problems with my back, and I had my back checked after I moved to New York, and they said that I had an injured nerve. So, but nothing ever came of it. Now, the FBI, this is when I found out about the FBI, that they were not necessarily the good guys that I've seen on TV, because they came to investigate what had happened, and two of them came. They picked me up, and so they just drove me all around, remote places that I'd never known in Jackson, and they threatened me themselves, they were supposed to be investigating the case. And what occurred after that, that's when they took me out. That's how I ended up going to the county. They took me out of the fairground and locked me up, as if punishment was there, took me and locked me up at the county jail. Yeah, that was how I ended up my first time at the county jail, because once they had taken me and supposedly interviewing me for what had happened, the incident that happened with my back, and nothing that I remember ever came of that. Next thing I knew, they came and got me and told me they were taking me down to the county jail. The other profound thing that happened, my first day back to school, I was actually in court.
You were what?
They were having those of us that had reached the age of 18. Okay. I remember my first day back at school. I could not go back to school because I had to be at court. Yeah. And that was not a scary moment, because I didn't. At that time, they had not locked that, and I'd been locked up for a long period of time, but I heard about people who were doing time for having been involved, and so that was really scary, because I wanted to be in school, and I was at court, yeah.
So you had to go to court? About your case.
Well, yeah, about my case, and I guess they were taking us in alphabet. I believe that's how I ended up being one of the first ones, because my last name is Adams. So I think they were taking us in alphabetical order. I do believe that's how that was happening, you know. Cassie, you remember Cassie Hall?
The lawyer?
Yeah, well, he was
Yeah, I
my
know him.
lawyer.
Yeah.
He was my lawyer. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know who
And-
posted bail for you?
I see. I don't even know how that case was disposed or any
Oh, you don't?
anything. No,
Okay.
I don't remember. All I noticed that's something. I don't know what ever happened. I just know that I didn't have to go to any time in jail. So I don't know how they disposed of that case. That's some research that I need to do. You know, how do they disposed of the cases for those of us that did have to be in court.
Okay.
But at some point when I was in New York, I was applying for my teacher's license, so I had gotten my records from here, and I remember a case in, that most of the cases I do recall, they were charging us with disorderly conduct and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But they never had a conviction on any of them.
No, they were probably thrown out after a while, removed to federal court. That's what the process was during that time. Civil rights lawyers would get them removed. Well, that's good. All right.
And then came the summer of '64 when I graduated from high school. When I graduated from high school, I went to Tougaloo, and summer '64 was when the freedom, that freedom summer.
Freedom Summer.
And I was at Tougaloo,
Okay.
and that's when I met I was very NAACP person until I went to Tougaloo. Basically what I knew were the NAACP.
Were you going to summer school at Tougaloo?
Yeah, I was pre-freshman.
Okay.
I was in a pre-freshman program at Tougaloo.
Oh, all right.
And prior I remember having gone to the March on Washington, where a lot of young people in Jackson had become very disenchanted with the NAACP.
So you went to the march?
I did go to the
In
march.
63?
I did go to the march.
With the NAACP bus?
Yes, on
On
one
a
of those
bus?
NAACP. I think it was about 6 busloads of us who went out of Jackson, if I recall. I do think the number was 6. And what was really significant about that, we had stopped in Meridian, Mississippi, and I do recall having stopped, when we stopped in Meridian, Mississippi, there was a busload of ministers that were also, we were on bus, and then there were also a busload of the leaders, the ministers.
Right.
And I do recall them having told the people there in Meridian, when we were returning, when we returned from the March on Washington, we were all fired up and all charged up, the young people. We were real fired up, having gone and heard all those programs, having heard Martin speak, and just being involved and being there. So we came back to Mississippi really ready. We were going to integrate. No more segregation for us. And so we stepped out of that bus in Meridian. And we
On the way back?
On the way back.
Okay.
So we stepped off of those buses, and we were going in, and we were going to go to the white folks' side. No more going to the black folks' side. We were going to the white side, and we did. And they were actually there. They knew when we were coming back, so they were prepared for us. And the way they attacked us was, it was a game of thugs, of white thugs. When we went in, and we sat up at the lunch counter, we went to the white folks' bathroom. So, no more segregation. We'd gone to the March on Washington, so we were going to end it right there and then, So, the gang of white thugs, they attacked the young black men. And so, of course, we were not we were not about any violence. We were not going to be attacked, and we were going to fight back. And it got, it took, we went.
Was this a bus stop or was
This was the bus stop in Meridian.
bus stop? Okay. Was it a Greyhound bus stop?
I believe it was.
Okay.
I believe it was. And so we get outside, because the gang, they attacked us inside the restaurant, and then the incident could get from the inside to the outside. And when we were outside, then there were all of these white people that had seemed to come out from nowhere, and children, grown-ups, and they were
mob.
A mob, exactly. It was a mob of white people, and they were uniformed. They were black and white, I remember. And they had stuff, they were throwing eggs, they were throwing all kinds of stuff at us. And it probably would have been a riot there, but the ministers that had gone on the bus, they actually formed a line between us and them. And they begged us, children, get back on the bus, get back on the bus, get back on the bus. And they did manage to get us back on the bus. We left Meridian, but we were told by the sheriff and all of those to come back that following Monday for some hearing and stuff. So we go back down to Meridian.
So you had been really arrested, huh?
No, but we were supposed to come because we were charging them for having attacked us.
Oh, okay.
We were charging them for having attacked us. And so we were supposed to go back in court. When we got back to Meridian that following week, you know what they told us? That the judge had gone fishing.
The jury had gone.
The judge had gone.
The judge had gone.
Judge had gone fishing. So we were young people. We were upset because the ministers, and they were because we probably got killed there, But we were young. We were upset at them for having not let us fight back. And then we were further upset because nothing was done, and we were attacked. So when we came, so what followed that week, we were really angry. And so I remember in Walton School that we would go to Walton School and we would just look for white folks to throw things at, And it was during that period that I became very disenchanted with the NAACP. And when I went to Tougaloo in the summer of '64, I met the SNCC people, and day one, they had such a different image than the NAACP, and they seemed to be more. They seem to be more involved in actually doing much more, And I got involved. I met Stokely, and then I started going up in the Delta doing voter registration. I got really, really very involved. It was also my first time of having met. During my time, '63 and all, it was all mostly people that I was around with black folks, and then I began to meet, I guess, white folks there. I began to meet, the students that had come down for summer '64. And so I don't know that I ever officially became a SNCC person. I call myself a SNCC groupie because I was just hanging. I was enthralled with SNCC. I was enthralled, with.
So you used to travel around and do
Yes,
voter
travel around,
registration?
do voter registration, and there was a time that we went up in the Delta. The Greenwood, I believe it was, and that Stokely was something. I loved Stokely. Stokely was Stokely was my idol. I just liked his energy. And Stokely, there was a young man on Tougaloo's campus. His name was Howard Spencer.
Oh, I know Howard.
And Howard, Howard passed away.
I know.
Well, Howard became, I guess, the student mobilizer for Tougaloo's campus. And we formed what was called a Political Action Committee, which I was a member of that, but it was an official member, and that, I guess I considered myself a part of SNCC because the Political Action Committee was, part of sneak organizing. And yes, we went to the voters registration, and then they had was the Poor People's Campaign, was it? Not that's, what did they have there?
Where?
It was a SNCC. They doing a Freedom Summer.
You're a freedom, they had a freedom school there.
There was a Freedom School. I was
Yeah.
involved in this Freedom School, but there was also some kind of food campaign, wasn't it?
Food campaign?
Mm.
In Greenwood, they brought down, didn't they bring down food to people in
But
Greenwood?
it was a name for it, though.
Okay, I don't remember that. I wasn't here in '64.
But anyway, so I was involved in the Freedom Schools.
Okay.
Actually, I was involved in the Freedom Schools. So
And Howard Spencer was on the Tougaloo campus then?
Howard Spencer was the Tougaloo's campus.
Okay.
Howard Spencer, and he became more of a Howard was actually our student leader. He was the one that really mobilized us on Tougaloo's campus.
Okay. I remember when he organized the Black and Proud School in Jackson.
Yeah, that was after I had left and gone to
You were
Europe.
gone by then.
I was gone by then.
Okay.
I left. My mom was actually scared for me because I became very, very radical. I became probably more radical than she was really afraid, because when I went to Tougaloo, I began to bring white folks to her house.
No.
And she was scared about that.
She was scared about that.
Yeah, she called me that summer. I was really probably too much to Tougaloo, actually, because they had the officials at Tougaloo asked me thought it was best that I did not come back to the second session of the pre-freshman program, because I was more involved in the movement stuff than I was whatever I was supposed to be doing as a pre-freshman. So, and I guess I just wasn't not afraid of, it was just okay about integration. So right away I was hanging out with the white kids, and I would bring them to my mom's house, and my mom pulled me aside one day that I brought them there. She says, "Now look at here.
Now look at it.
You've gone a bit too far." She says, "They are not going to have it." She said, "Don't bring the white kids back here. They are not going to have it, and I'm not going to have it." Stuff, because she says, "Do you know what will happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these white folks will kill you." So she had really become concerned, particularly, knowing that I had gotten hit, the summer of '63, and here I was now at Tougaloo, and she really, me going to Tougaloo was really important to her, because I was the first of her siblings to attend Tougaloo, and my grandma had attended Tougaloo as prep school, Tougaloo. And it was my mama's dream, as most black families, they want to send some child to Tougaloo, and I was it for my family, and so.
What year did you go to Tougaloo?
64.
64, okay.
I graduated from high school, Brinkley, summer '64. I went when Tougaloo was active, when Tougaloo was hot. During that time that I was there, what's his name? Kennedy, was Robert.
Robert Kennedy was killed?
Yeah, Robert Kennedy came through there.
Came through.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Were you
He
there when
spoke
he came
there.
through?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, at the chapel there.
Oh.
Yes, I do recall. That's trying to get in touch with him, So when I was working in the archive, I was looking to see, because they do have pictures, students gathered around him, and I was trying to see if I could, locate any picture of me, But yes, I was there when he was there.
Now, you graduated Brinkley in 1964.
64.
And you went where? Where'd you go from there?
To Tougaloo.
Oh, okay. Then, and did you enroll as a freshman?
I was a pre-freshman in
Okay.
summer.
Oh.
Yes, but then I did enroll,
You did enroll?
I did enroll.
Okay.
I stayed at Tougaloo from 64 to 67.
Oh, okay.
And my mom, because I was just stayed active while I was there. I was on that bus that Beanie, Constance Slaughter and Beanie took over there to JSU.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I stayed, and my mama really was very concerned. We had begun to have big conflict, and because she was disenchanted that the struggle was more of my life than school. And I was not the model student because I was very, very active.
You were too active.
Yeah, I was not the model student. And she had really we'd begun to have big conflict, and she was really afraid for me. And so,
You were at Tougaloo the year of the Meredith March?
yes, I marched in that march. Yes, I remember marching. Then that was again, what was that, 65, right?
66.
That was in 66, but I was in that march. Well, what
So
was
was
in
I.
65? What happened in 65?
Well, they had the Jackson, the fairground lockup. They had a march in Jackson, and they locked up everybody, and they put them in the fairgrounds.
I probably was in that.
Were you in that?
But that's why I need to go down. I don't remember having gone to jail 4 times here.
Oh,
I
God.
remember having gone 4 times here.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember
You remember when
when the Meredith March came through, we got in from Tougaloo. I remember picking up the March Tougaloo. Now, what I remember most about that was the first time that I'd seen the Klan come out in large numbers in their regalia, you know, the Wizards and the Grand Wizard and all of those. So I do recall that. And also having taken beard off from the march and taken people by my mom's house.
You remember that Sunday when the march ended?
I don't know if I remember details about it.
Okay. You remember the meeting at that night when they had James Brown and all those folks there? You remember that?
Yes, I do remember
I was there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do remember that. Oh, yes. So that was the ending of the march.
That was the ending of the
I know it was because that was probably one of the...
Because the next morning they marched from Tougaloo into Jackson.
Well, that's
And
what
they had a big rally.
That's what I picked up, and at the big rally.
Yeah, they had a big rally. Hold on a minute. I spoke at that rally.
Now, where exactly was the rally? Because I do remember the big rally. And the Klan, do you remember that the Klan came out? Because that's what I do remember.
Okay, hold on. Okay, go.
So now,
Tell us what you remember.
what I remember at that big rally is that the Klan was out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having, you know, the car with the wizard, the Grand Wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember, probably it was the first time that I actually seen the Klan in their, you know, their hood.
They regalia?
Yeah, they actually came right out in it. I do remember that. And there was an incident at Tougaloo, and I don't know if it happened after the march when they actually burned that cross, and that you know, that's in our archive there when they actually, I was there when they burned that cross on our gate too. They burned the cross at our gate. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. And the next morning they marched from Tougaloo, and that's fuzzy in my mind too. They marched from Tougaloo into Jackson.
And it was State Street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went down. Now,
State
clearly,
Street.
I remember the march, that we marched there from State Street and having gone, and the rally, and the Klan. That's what I remember, the rally and the Klan. I remember the Klan. I remember the rally and the Klan and the Grand Wizard and his. And I think he might have been riding in one of those convertible things because I was really fascinated. It fascinated me. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, it was. To just see them boldly come out like that. Do you remember? Now, was sometime when we would go to the Masonic Temple for rallies. You know that the White Citizen Council also had a large, somewhere near.
A meeting.
Yeah, and I remember having times hearing them sing, we would sing, we shall overcome. And I do recall hearing them sing, they had taken that version of we shall keep the niggas down. You know, they had their own version of we shall overcome. And we should keep the niggas down. Then I remember one of those marches where I actually did. I witnessed, you know, the dogs and the water hoses. Now I don't know which march that was from Lynch Street, you know, into Jackson, you know. I haven't one time seen people, those scenes that you see on Eye and the Crying, and I noted that if they picked up a lot of those scenes from Samuel,
Right.
yeah, but we've had incidents here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, such incidents
Oh,
here,
surely.
on our marches. And there was a young man one year, and I don't know if that was 67 when something happened on Lynch Street there, and the young man got shot there. His name was Brown, I believe.
Ben Brown.
Yes.
He worked for me.
Well, I was, what had happened on Lynch Street? I don't know it, I remember.
Well, he came out to go to the store to get something to eat that night, and the police shot him in the back.
But the National Guards came out, right?
Yeah, they were having a demonstration at Jackson State.
Uh-huh.
But he got shot down the street on Lynch
Okay,
Street.
now, because I remember having been in that demonstration.
Mhm.
But I'm trying, because I've asked somebody, what were the details? I remember the shooting. He got shot, and I remember the National Guards being on the street. And again, the town where we were, they were boop, up and down the street. And I do remember that we decided to test, a few of us decided to test whether it's in our training, somewhere doing our nonviolent training. We were told that the National Guard would not fire at you unless fired upon. And I remember that she was threw something at them during that incident, and that they did turn around and start shooting, and remember us hitting, running into the alleys and all of that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but there was a demonstration.
Yeah, at
What had
Jackson State.
happened at Jackson State, because that's what I remember being a part. Something had happened at Jackson State.
Well, that was around the time of Dr. King's death, and there were student demonstrations all over, right?
Okay.
And there was a similar demonstration at Jackson State where the 3 students got killed. Do you remember that?
See, now that's where it's all fuzzy, because the 3 students got killed when I was no longer here. I don't
You
know.
weren't? Okay, because that was 68. When that shooting at Jackson State happened, that was 68. That was
Maybe
after
I'd
Kent
come
State.
back home then or something.
Hmm?
Maybe I'd come back home or something. I do remember being a part of that. But that was 68?
When they got killed, when they had the student.
I know, when Ben got killed.
Oh, well,
that
Ben.
That was
that's-
67, wasn't
Ben
it?
got killed, I believe, in 67.
That was 67, that's what
That
I'm
was a
talking
separate
about.
instance.
I was at, when Martin Luther King got killed, I do recall I had left Mississippi and was living in White Plains, New York,
Oh,
and feeling very removed and isolated from things, because I left Mississippi, and the movement was my life, and the movement moved me, and I just moved.
when did you actually leave?
I left in July of 67.
Oh,
And
you left Jackson in
yes,
July
and
of
my
96?
mom, and it was not even connected with the movement. My mom was really, we were having problems. She called my sister and said, come get this child because she's going to get herself killed. And
Your older sister?
my older sister. And
She
so
lived in
my
New
older
York.
sister, right, she lived in New York. And my mom said, it's this child, she's going to get killed here and stuff. She wanted me out of Mississippi. And my sister came home for the summer, and she took me back to New York. And so I was isolated from the movement, or from the world of my familiar, really. And I became restless for that. That was my way. And I became there was something going on there in White Plains.
White Plains,
There
that's
was
where
the
your sister
urban
lived?
yes, it was urban renewal, black removal, urban renewal. And I got head over heel into that. As a matter of
got
fact,
involved
the
in that.
place that my sister and I lived today is no longer there, because we were right in the line to be removed. Where she lived, they had the mall there. Now the street no longer exists. And I got involved in that, and that's how, once I got involved in that, I became active in White Plains, and then I still had the longing for the kind of movement and the activism that I knew here. And that's what really led me into becoming a more militant person, because I didn't have SNCC, I didn't have people here. And at one point, my sister took me into New York City, and I met the Panthers.
You meant what?
The Black Panthers.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lord, that's right. But prior to that, I was in White Plains, and what really pained me about that, it was in White Plains, and how I found out about Martin, well, of course, it was all on the news, and I was like, well, who am I going to grieve with, you know?
Yeah.
And I called home, and I got Cleveland's number.
Cleveland.
Cleveland was in Rochester, New York, I believe, upstate New York. He was at that time. So I called home. I was like, I got to talk to somebody that I know, you know, because here I had to grieve all alone. I didn't have any, because, you know, of course, there was a camaraderie there, you know. I felt, Martin, this is a part of me, you know, this is a part of my life. It wasn't just some great leader that, you know, that I know got killed. But this is a man who I've been in marches with, you know, and I've sat and stargazed, you know, and heard him speak, you know, when he came to Jackson. And so I needed someone to grieve with, and I called home. I was like, I got to come to Cleveland, because Cleveland got me into it.
Got you into it.
So I got to talk to Cleveland, because Cleveland always made sense of the world to me. Cleveland, see, I was not politically astute. I was just an activist, you know. I didn't quite understand the politics. I knew racism, you know, knew that very well. Right. But Cleveland could make sense of things. Cleveland was very brilliant.
He could explain it to you.
He could explain things and make sense of the world. And at that time, I knew it was in New York, and I didn't know how close Rochester was, but for some reason, I just needed to talk to Cleveland, and they did. I called him. I called home, and I did get his number, and I called him up, and I was able to grieve and cry, you know, and then he told me things that could comfort me, and I think the other thing that really saddened me, Tougaloo College Choir, which I was a member of, sang that evening at Carnegie Hall.
Is that right?
And I was like, wow, I'm not here. They sang for Martin, they did tribute for Martin at Carnegie Hall. And I cried, and I cried.
Did you go? Did you go to the concert?
No, I saw it all on the news. Because I was so removed from that, that I wasn't even, I didn't even realize it until I saw it on the news. And I was like, wow. And I'm not there. You know, and I'm not there.
Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie Hall, yes they did. I remember that, and I just sat there and I cried. I cried because I wasn't there. I felt I should be there. I should be there singing with them, doing this tribute for Martin, you know. Yeah, I should be there. Yeah, but I tell you that. So there was Martin, and but I don't. Martin thing, the Mega's death really affected. It was like losing my parent, losing my father. You know, it truly felt like I had lost a father, and I'd known him for such a short period, but it seemed like I'd known Mega for a lifetime. You know, it really seemed that I had known him for much longer. You know. And I think, you know, after Martin, and I, like a lot of young people, I was to hell with nonviolence. If they killed a man of peace, to hell with nonviolence. And that probably was the motivator that drove me right straight to the Panthers. Yeah, and I remember having gone, And I officially joined the Black Panthers in, I believe,
In New York?
December of '68. December of '68, mine got killed, and I was just angry. I was angry. I was angry at what was going on in White Plains. What I was really was angry. It was just a lot of anger. And I became very radical, defiant, in a different kind of way. I was,
You were staying with your sister.
I was staying with my sister, but because I wasn't, as I said, because I was an activist, I looked for something, and I got involved in the urban renewal in White Plains, and what transpired from that is that began to escalate. I was working there also in White Plains.
You had a job?
My first job was teaching at a home parochial school. I mean, a parochial home school.
Oh, tell us how
children.
how did you manage to get certified with that whole process of...
I didn't. My first job, I wasn't even certified, and I taught.
Is that right?
Yes,
Where?
I taught at White Plains.
At White Plains?
Home and what was White Plains? It was a
Did you have your degree?
parochial home. No, what happened when I went there?
Yeah.
I went on a job. I didn't have a degree. Still had not completed my last year.
You
And
did?
So I had not.
You had not? Okay.
So I went
Did you
on
go
an
back to
interview for this my last year of college.
Yeah, I know.
So I went on this interview at this parochial home and school for children.
Oh.
And
You were interviewing for a job?
I was interviewing for a clerical position.
For a clerical.
And so then they, once they, and during the interview, and talked about my background, and so they said, how would you like to teach? And I said, well, I don't know how to have a teacher certificate. So they said, it's okay. The thing is that they they did not want to pay you. So it was cheaper for them to hire someone, but it was more than that made it on the clerical position.
Right.
So I said, sure, I'll do it. But then, of course, once I became really active, involved in politics of White Plains, they found some reason to terminate my employment. So I taught first graders there. And I must have taught first graders there for about a year.
How about that?
And then from there, I went to White Plains Child Daycare Center. So I was a teacher at a daycare center. And, they loved me there. They loved all the ideas I brought, because I had lots of energy.
Yeah.
And I never forget that woman's name, the director, Helen Dunby. Oh, she was like...
And what was your position at the daycare center? What did you do there?
I was assistant teacher there.
Assistant teacher.
And so she loved me because I had, from having worked in the freedom schools, I picked up, all these little techniques. And so I brought all of that to the classroom. Oh, but then I had gotten myself, then I'd met the Panthers.
Who?
The Panthers. So during this time, I met the Black Panthers. And so then I started dressing differently. Well, prior to meeting the Panthers, I'd actually become a part of the culture movement in New York. I met Leroy Jones, Baraka.
Oh, yeah.
And, they were all into black and proud, so I became black and proud, I was wearing my African regalias, and so that's how I started going to work. Then I'd take the drums with me.
Oh, my.
And so then it became threatening, because now I start wearing my long earrings down to here. So the assistant director, she started complaining first. She says, started with the earrings. Don't you think those earrings are a little too long for a daycare teacher? Little stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
And then I took off.
To where?
I took off one day, and I cleared it. I cleared it with my head teacher. I cleared it. I said, I'm going to go. But then I'm being young and naive and just figured everybody's with the movement. So it's a black woman. So I told her I was going to one of those graveyard site memorials they have for Malcolm. So I took off to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing I know, the next thing I know, the director has called me in. Well, in the meantime, so that I'm doing that, and I'm also involved now with urban renewal, and protests and that, and all up in the mayor's office with that. Just I'm Miss Activist again, and so that was a conflict with the daycare center because they had finally moved. They had actually finally relocated us from our housing that we had there in White Plains to some other little kind of on the outskirts of White Plains, but they had built this big complex like high rises, and that's where they put us. And they had 2 rooms there of facilities for daycare. So the attendants there wanted to know if I would help them in starting a daycare center in our building for our children. White Plains Child Daycare Center wanted the facility to establish their own daycare center in the building. So the director saw it as that it was a conflict of interest for me to work in the service of the building that I actually lived in, and to actually work, so that was, so it just, well, anyway, problems began to arise, one after the other at the daycare center. And so then she called me in, and then she says that, well, they're right, they were going to fire me. And I say, on what charges? So she had about 5 things, and insubordination to the job, because they went back and say I walked off the job the day that I went to. And inability to work with kids. Now here you're talking about a teacher that they had asked me, I was just an assistant teacher. Earlier on, before I became a threat, they had asked me to do workshops with the techniques that I brought to the classroom.
Now they want to fire you.
Now they want to fire me. It's about 5 charges. And so I said, well, you won't fire me without a fight because these charges are unsound, and I certainly didn't walk off to the job. But the insubordination was that I was trying to start a daycare center in the building. And that was conflict of interest.
With that.
Yeah. And until stuff, that was the one day in the building to work with children. I was just outraged. And also, during that time, I had started my own little Black and Proud school at the George Washington Carver Community Center. So it's just like very big community activist center. So then the parents said to her, I got the parents involved because I was working, when I at the community center. I had taken, on Saturdays, the kids that went to the daycare center came to my Black and Proud school at the George.
On Saturdays?
On Saturday, and I started giving them natural hairdos and stuff because the little girls wanted their hair natural. It's the funniest little thing. The little white girl that was among the group. So some of the little black girls went back to school with their little hair all in naturals and stuff. The little white girl said, Miss Adam, can you do my hair? So the innocence of children. But what happened, it got to be really, really big, because the fight over the 2 rooms in our building got it, so it became almost a fight between me and the daycare center that I worked for. It was us and them. And we ended up in the mayor's office around there. So my director and I ended up across the table from each other.
Yeah.
Over these buildings, these 2 rooms.
This was in White Plains?
This was in White Plains.
Oh, okay.
And so she did attempt to fire me, and so I mobilized the parents. So the parents told her, if you fire her, we're going to pull our children out of the daycare center. So then she called me in, and she says, then we'll compromise, So she says, let's talk. Now she wants to talk, just, one-on-one, put all this other stuff aside. She says, she thinks that the problem between the 2 of us, because she brought it down, and that is just the problem between she and I, the director, is that she's white and I'm black.
That was the problem.
That was the problem. And I said to her, Miss Dundee, I'm going to tell you, like y'all tell us, some of my best friends are white folks. So it was really interesting, that New York experience, in terms of, I think actually I became, it was interesting how I became really more conscious of racism in the North.
In New York?
Yes. Because I had the illusion, particularly, here Miss Donnelly was a Jew woman. My first job with Catholics, and I always thought that nuns were superior, and they were different.
Yeah.
And so I recognized that then, well, and this stuff exists, you know.
Yeah.
This is not just a Southern thing, and these
But it's a different kind of race.
Yes, yes, so that
And it's a more subtle kind.
Yes, 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 and Miss Donnie taught me that. What's interesting, though, that with that woman, when I came back to Mississippi, once I had become a true militant, I had to run around. I left Mississippi because my mom felt I was in danger here.
Yeah.
I ran back to Mississippi.
Came back to Mississippi.
Because I felt my life threatened from having gone full circle, full-fledged into, you know, the extreme of the movement and stuff. And by 1971,
71.
so here I was back home.
You came back in 71?
Yes, I came home in 71 because I was scared. The big guns was in the being a Black Panther. You had the big guns at your Hoover and the FBI and the whole bit, you know.
Yeah.
And so the world had become really threatening for me, and I came home because I needed the security of this place. I needed to feel secure because I knew fear that I did not know here and stuff. You know, it was serious. I mean, I had gotten myself into a level of politics that was really serious. I mean, you could get killed. You know? I mean, I was real conscious of that now. I don't know, when I was in the movement here, it was like we were fighting for something, and the threat of dying is just never crossed my mind. I mean, I knew once Mega got killed that people did get killed.
Right.
You know, that people did get killed. But I think because when I was here, it was lots of us, and we were united, and it was our freedom songs, and it was our quest and our drive for freedom. You know, we were
A different spirit.
yeah, it was a different spirit. But the more militant part of the movement, one, you just never knew who was who. And the passion that I went into the struggle with, it was a different, you know, you had people who, I was clear on why I went in the movement here. I was clear that there was racism. I was clear that we were treated unequal.
Yeah.
That was real clear.
You were less sure about what the goals were.
Yeah.
In the other movement up north.
Yeah, I was really less sure, and the people were not, you could not trust. And I looked around one day and I was like, wow, I'm all alone in the world. The party's falling apart. The FBI's after us.
And the federal government was your
yeah.
straight-on enemy.
Yeah.
In that situation there.
And you don't have within our own ranks the security is not there.
COINTELPRO program had the spies all over.
And I was in California when I came here. I was in California. I called my mama, but I was like, "Well, come home."
How did you get to
come
California?
get me. That's just what my mama asked me. That same question.
She asked you how you got to
I
California.
called my mama up. I was like, "Oh, my man, want to come home?" No, I said, "No, I didn't tell her I want to come home. I said, come and get me."
Come and get you.
Come and get
Where
me.
were you?
In California.
Where?
San Francisco.
You in San Francisco?
I said, come and get me. My whole world was falling apart. Right?
Oh,
I was like,
my
Mommy,
Lord.
come and get me. And there are 2 children.
How'd you get out there?
Well, some of my comrades, the party had fallen apart. That was the year the party had fallen apart. It was just crazy. The Black Panther party had fallen apart.
Yeah.
There was the rift between the leadership. Huey and
Newton.
Eldridge was at each other's throat.
Yeah.
And so the East Coast, where I was,
That was a different group.
we had become, well, we were one when we most of us who had entered the party were nationalists, you know, well, I didn't know Malcolm, but the people, I had begun to embrace, you know, black nationalism, and I met a lot of the people that knew Malcolm, so they were nationalists, and then the RIFA in California, see, they were never as nationalistic as the people in New York. And so there was this big rift between the two forces, and by the time 71, it was all out war. So you had Panthers killing Panthers, then you had the FBI, and so during that time, people that I knew close up were dying. I mean, people I knew close up were dying.
Right.
Young people like myself, you know, were dying, and it was a scary time. But if people were dying, they were going to jail. And I had met some people from California. No sooner I had met some of the younger brothers from California, because I had become one of the, in terms of the women, because of my zest and my willingness to just be all out involved. So I had become a respected sister by the brothers, the men. And so then I was called on to do things. So at this time I was called to go on a mission to California to get some money, to get some men out of jail, and some guys who had come from California and had gotten arrested in New York. And I was to go on this mission to get this money. And so when I got out there, the money wasn't there. I thought I would go there, pick it up, and come right on back.
But it wasn't there.
It wasn't there. The money had to be made, and it, you know, had to be made plenty ways. So here I was, and then the time to stay there got longer, and I had my youngest child with me, but my oldest child had left in New York with my sister, and the stay got longer. Their father was incarcerated. He was a Panther man. He was incarcerated. So here I am in California. One of my children with me, one in New York. The stay got longer. The people that I was around, I did not particularly like. So I decided to venture out. I said, well, I'm going to get myself an apartment because I don't know how long I'm going to be out here.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, so I did manage to get an apartment with the man that was supposed to be my the man that had brought me out there and stuff. So I got an apartment with him, and then George Jackson happened.
George Jackson. Oh,
yes. Yeah. Then George Jackson happened. So the focus of what, you know, was supposed to be happening, these men were supposed to be getting the resource to get these men out of jail in New York. They got sidetracked by George Jackson, the killing of George Jackson. So here I am in my apartment one night, and the man didn't come home. All I knew, there was another brother came by, and he said to him, they had killed George Jackson. I know all the men were all crazy. They was mad. They was plenty mad about that. And one of the brothers came by, and they picked him up, and they left. And I knew it was something, had something to do with police. I just knew it had something to do with it. They left that apartment, and later on, so I hear this way over in the morning, and I got this strange feeling something terrible has happened. And sure enough, I guess it must have been about 4 or 5-ish. Our brother came by the apartment. He knocked on my door. He says, "Oh, they got the brother," means that he had been arrested. And you're gonna have to leave. And so here I am in California, and it's like, okay, they got the only person that I really know.
Was it?
Yeah. And so I woke up that morning, so I said, well, and he had to, introduce me to, there were some people I knew when they lived. I said, well, I'm going to go to their house because this is bad news, And so you know what those people told me, sister? You can't come here because they have arrested him. They're going to come. You're hot now.
Mm-hmm. They gonna come after you.
Right. And so I was like, oh my God, what am I
What are you gonna do?
I'm here in this strange place all by myself with my child.
With your child.
And my baby was all about 1 year old.
Oh my Lord.
With my my baby was born in March of 70, so this was like August of 71. And so I went to go back to the apartment, and then we think it might be the FBI. So they said, we wouldn't advise you to go back to that apartment. So I went, and so back to the people, and so they said, well, and they let me stay there for a little till things come. They said, well, so I eased back to that apartment, and I don't know what moved me to burn. I left a light burning in the window. I burned some candles. I said, I'm leaving everything. I'm taking my son, and I'm going somewhere, and I'm going to call my mama. And that's what happened.
That's what you did.
I was like, Mom. She didn't, so she was like, child, I can wear you. I said, I'm in California.
Mm-hmm.
She says, well, what are you doing in California? I thought you were in New York. And I was like, oh, I want to come home. I want to come home. So she said, can you get yourself to the airport? And so she paid for me here.
To Jackson. From San Francisco, you returned to Jackson?
Mm-hmm. From San Francisco, I returned to Jackson. But now I did not stay. I stayed home in Mississippi, and that was that was old. So my mom, they got me home. My mom sent my baby sister back to New York to get my other child. She was like, there's no way that you're going to have one child, and you're going to get your children. You're going to have your children.
With you?
Yeah. So, and, what about my stuff? She's like, to hell with that stuff.
Yeah.
She's gone up there to get your child, and that's that.
That's what she's getting.
Yeah.
That's what she's doing.
So then they let me rest up. I stayed here, and then my mom worked with Dr. Shirley, and they got me a job here, and that's what I think I'll start telling you the story. At a daycare center here. And I start telling the story because I was very surprised that that woman in White Plain actually gave me a good reference.
She did?
She actually did.
Wow.
That was really surprising. That's how I start telling you the story. That I was very shocked because I was reluctant to use them as a reference, but then the director here, which was Dr. Shirley's wife, she told me, oh, she gave you an outstanding. And I was like, that is really surprising. Yeah. But she did, and I was happy she did. But now listen, I'm here working at the Jackson Hines Daycare Center. And I'm finally getting comfortable being home. Things were happening in Jackson, and I didn't have a clue that it had anything to do with me.
71. Well, there was, there was the shootout on Lewis Street, the RNA, the Republic of New Africa.
Right. And there was the Republic of New Africa, but there was some big robbery here, and I'd heard of it,
There was
and
what?
Somebody had robbed some bank during that time,
Oh,
and I heard
okay.
of it. But anyway, here I am. I'm working. November. 2 white men come into the daycare center, and I took one look and I said, "That's the FBI, and they're here for me." Well, my co-workers looked. They came in and they said, "We had to put the kids down for the afternoon." So my co-worker, we all looked at them. Now, of course, I recognized the FBI.
Sure.
So, and I think my
They
co-workers
ain't hard to
did. Yeah,
recognize.
right. So my co-worker. So they asked, they looked at me and then they say, "Well, is the Frankye May Adams here?" No one said anything.
Nobody said anything.
You know, so they
Yeah.
looked directly at me and they say, "We want to talk to you, Frankye."
Mhm.
Says, "Yes, sir, well, we can talk." So I took them into the director's office. She'd gone to lunch. This is Dr. Shirley's wife.
Dr. Shirley's right.
She'd gone to lunch. And she came, so they had me. It was just two of them that I knew at that time. It was just two of them. So they had me there in her office. So they asked me about all these people whom I didn't know. But of course, you know them. I was like, no, I don't know anybody. So they showed me pictures of my husband. They said, you know him, don't you? I said, no, I don't know anybody, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. But at any rate, Dr. Shirley's wife come in. She looked like she had seen a ghost. It wasn't until she come in and they had gone on about that, because they did say, well, then, you know, we will be back. And I remember them telling me, it was like, you keep that mess up in New York. We don't see, they told me, they said, well, you're from here. You know, we don't play that mess down here in Mississippi, you know.
Yeah.
You keep that up in New York. Dr. Shirley's wife, when she came, they had actually surrounded the place.
Oh my goodness. The daycare center?
Yes, it was
Jackson
8
Hines.
carloads of them out
Oh
there.
my goodness.
And so what had happened, it seems that there was this young man, Herman Bell, from Bayou, Mount Bayou, Mississippi.
Mount Bayou, yeah. Herman Bell?
Bell.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was a Panther man. So it seemed that he had come here, and I think they were part of some kind of revelry or something that had occurred here.
Mm.
My brother's, younger brother's last name is Bell.
Mm.
And it seemed that also one of those women that those men were messing around with, had told them that I had come to Mississippi to be a Harriet Tubman of sort, to make way for these men coming here that I didn't even know were here.
Oh.
But the FBI had pieced these pieces together as that I had, and I had come home because I was scared.
Yeah, right.
But they had that I was here to make way for these men to come here
to
and
Mississippi.
to be Miss Harriet, you know, to do an underground railroad
Right.
type of thing. They actually did not let up off me until Dr. Shirley, and I do appreciate them. They were very supportive of me. Not only did they provide me a job, they also, my mom went to them because they had started surveilling my mom's house. They tapped the phone.
Mm-hmm.
They terrorized us, essentially.
Right, they do that.
And so they got an injunction for them to stay their distance from me, and that if, you know, if they needed to talk to me, that they had to do it by way of lawyers. You know, so I do appreciate my community. I'm glad that I did come. I came to the right place because they did support me, and my family supported me because my family was clear. Yeah, she's gone a little bit further than we wanted her in terms of the movement piece,
Yeah.
but she is definitely not a killer.
Yeah.
She has not killed any.
Yeah.
We did not raise a killer here, okay?
Yeah.
So they were clear on that piece there,
Mhm.
and I do appreciate my family and my community for having this.
They stood up for you.
Oh, they stood up for me.
Oh, that's a wonderful
They
thing.
stood up for me. I came to the right place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would have gotten that kind of support had I not come home.
Right.
And I don't know what the story would have been had I not made that desperate move and came home.
And came back home.
Yeah, and came
Mhm.
back home. But I still had not gotten the movement out of my system. I started getting restless again. So in '72, I snuck back to New York. Didn't give my mom or anybody anything.
Didn't tell you? Oh,
I just packed my stuff,
oh my.
took my 2 kids, and I was back in it. So
Mm.
until I took a hard lesson for me to pull myself from the Panthers, I really got myself into some trouble. You know, I got into a big mess. I got incarcerated, and so I ended up in probation, and that's when I started turning it around and say, wow, this is serious, because of that I have children and I have a family. So it wasn't until the threat became like, wow, you're really going to end up into some serious trouble. That I really turned that piece around. Then I went back to school.
Oh,
I went
okay.
back to school.
Where, up there or down here?
I went back here, back there.
Up there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, where'd you go?
I went through the CUNY system.
To where?
I went to Queens College to finish up the undergraduate, and I went to City College and to do my graduate studies. And from there, I got back into the mainstream of life.
The mainstream.
Yeah, I got my little degrees, and then I went back into doing what it is that I do best, to teaching from the graduate level. I started as a teacher's assistant from the graduate level, and from there.
Did you stay with your sister?
Oh, no. My sister left me. I felt abandoned. My sister actually left in 75.
She did.
And went to Indiana. So I was pretty much in New York without family for the many years that I was there. I was in New York without family. I stayed in New York just until I just came home came home to stay about 6 years ago.
Oh.
I pulled myself out of the militant part of the movement. Though things was happening, my husband never pulled himself out of it until jail pulled him away. So he's in jail doing big time. So his involvement kept me.
He was in the Panthers.
Yeah, his involvement, because he just refused to, give it up, the parental lifestyle, and which eventually got him in some serious trouble. And once again, it actually, my connections by way of him went right into the 80s. It caused me a lot of grief because I was connected. The FBI didn't lighten up on me.
They stayed right behind you.
Oh, they stayed right on me. My life.
That's what they do.
Yeah, my life. As a matter of fact, when I came home, I was still very paranoid. I still was very paranoid. I've just begun to live a life where I'm just, even with things happening now, I know when I travel, when 9/11 happened, I felt that I was that they had probably pulled the list again. Yeah, because it seemed that every time I would travel, I would always get flagged, as to be one of those. It was happening so much that I was like, this is not just random jet. I think that any time I go through, so particularly during the high peak of 9/11, any time I would travel. So I'm pretty, but William Constler had shown me, and I think I do have a list at home. I am on the list.
You know Bill?
Oh, William, he was one of my lawyers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill?
He represented my husband in his first trial. Yeah.
Okay.
I knew. Well, the big joke that he would tell everybody. I'll show you a letter that he have. He wrote me a great recommendation for something. Because he says that he knows me from, that's what he told everybody in New York. Oh, I knew her when she was in Super, because she was here,
Yeah, right.
And his
Bill
daughter,
was here.
and his daughter also went to
Jackson
Tougaloo. And so we had this joke. I say, well, your daughter might have been that white girl that my friends and I beat up at too.
You told him that.
Yeah. But
Did you know Arthur Canoy too? They were law partners for a long time.
I don't think I knew him. I don't know him as I know Bill.
But Arthur came down and defended and represented the Mrs. Hamer, Mrs. Devine.
Right.
And in
now,
the
Mrs.
congressional
Devine,
trial.
I knew Mrs. Devine's daughter was at Tougaloo with me.
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Devine's daughter was at Tougaloo. We were so proud of her. What happened doing that? She was a pre-freshman also. Devine's daughter and Mary, Elsa Sawyer. She had a sister named Mary Sawyer. Elsa Sawyer was one of Tougaloo 9.
Oh, okay.
She had a sister named Mary Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Mary came in the same time I did Tougaloo. So it was Mary Sawyer, Barbara Devine, myself, and about 3 other women, 6 of us. So we were really, really very active.
Oh, this is good.
When
This is real good, Frankie. I'm enjoying this. This takes me back. I ain't had an interview like this. You want to keep going?
just a little while longer, because it was something about 65 that had come up that,
Okay.
that there was something that came up about 65 that I probably, oh, the Head Start, yeah. You know, I was one of the first to
Oh,
work
Head
with
Start.
Head Start.
Okay.
One of the first blacks. That was one of the first times that we actually worked with white. That's the white is from Millsap.
Oh, what?
I got to know.
Did you work for CD Jam?
I don't know who I worked for. All I know is that when I look at my, that was my first job actually in Mississippi.
What, the Head Start?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Where did you work?
somewhere in Third Edition.
Oh, in Jackson, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere in Jackson.
Al Rose, was he in it with you? Do you remember Al?
Arrow.
Rose, he's a lawyer, attorney Al Rose now, but he worked for CDGM.
Now CDGM, where was that?
Child Development Group in Mississippi.
All I know is that was, I don't know how it is that I got recruited to be one of the first, probably because I was very active and stuff.
Okay.
And well, that must have been about 65, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that must have been about
The
65.
grant came through Mary Holmes. Do you remember that? Marion Wright was involved.
Now, my memory, I'm telling you, that's why I need to talk, because I have memory blocks. I have
We
serious
all
memory.
do, right?
Well, I
We
want
all
this
have
back.
memory lapses, all of us do.
You think it's an age thing? I think about the
Well,
master because
sometimes it's just a bad memory. Young people are gonna have bad memories as well as elderly people.
But man, sometimes they're just details of my life that I don't remember, and I need to remember them. That's what has helped my novel back, because I remember pieces of my life, but the details, and I wonder is it because I
It's
lived these
sketchy after a
many
while.
lives.
Yeah?
I've lived thousands of lives, you know, that's the way I feel, because, well, I think probably, see, a lot of people stayed right here,
Uh-huh.
and then because I went away and I got so distracted from my life.
And you
that
got
I-
involved in other things.
Yeah,
That's what I
and I-
did
and
when
I
I
guess-
left Boston.
I guess that's what it is,
Yeah.
you know, that I
I
don't.
can relate to that.
You know, and because names and details, but I do remember having worked, as a matter of fact, when you know, when you get your little social security thing, in terms of your work history,
Mhm.
I see it on there. That's why I know it was 65, because that's what's on there. My first job was, actually my first job that I attempted to work was babysitting for some white folks, and I was really interested in how white folks live.
Mhm.
And when I was a teenager, my mom let me babysit for some of our family of the people that she worked for.
Right, right.
And so I remember having gone out there, and all I wanted to do was just, the first thing I wanted to do when they left was just nose around and see how white folks live.
Mhm.
But they had this big, huge cat.
CAT?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was very protective, and that cat I started being all nosy. I just wanted to be.
Followed you around.
Yeah, and then she would roar at me.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, my God, they train the cats to get black folks. The cats don't like black folks.
I
So
love that.
I told my mom I never want to go back to those people's house. But, so that was the first time that, and then actually during the movement time, when we were attempting, you know, to integrate places, I did attempt to get some job downtown somewhere, and washing dishes. They were so daggone racist. They were so daggone racist. And I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do this.
yeah.
I am not going to
Not
do
gonna work for these folks.
I'm not going to work for these folks. So,
Yeah.
so I guess my first official job really was working with the daycare center. Working with the daycare. But I was telling you about Divine. So there was the 6 of us, pre-freshmen.
Mhm.
Now the upperclassmen did not like us because, one, we were all involved with these big time people from the north, you know. We were hanging out with the Wade family, because, you know.
Important folks.
Yeah, the important folks from the north.
Was Ed King at Tougaloo there?
Yes, he was there.
Oh, man.
And so they decided they were going to get us when we officially became enrolled as fresh persons. So, you know, that was during the time they were still doing that crab stuff, you know, with freshmen. They make you do silly things, you know. And they were definitely going to make the 6 of us do the extreme things. And we decided, hell no. We were pretty important. We ain't going to do all that little silly stuff, like ribbons on your hair and, you know, and baby socks. And then, and those of us that could sing, they wanted us to entertain them late at night. Come down here. Stand up on a chair and sing. But we decided we were going to organize ourselves. So we call ourselves the Mighty Divine Ones, after
The
Miss
Mighty what?
Mighty Divine Ones,
Oh,
after Miss
Mighty.
Annie Divine, because we figured we knew important people. The Mighty D.O.s. We had got us little sweatshirts, put our names on them. We were the Mighty D.O.s because we knew Miss Annie Divine, and Miss Annie Divine's daughter was one of us, you know. Yeah, so that was the little piece that I wanted to tell you, about that Tougaloo, yeah. But Miss Barbara Divine, you know, she's, her daughter, Miss Annie Divine's daughter is here.
I know.
You met her?
Oh, yeah.
You met Barbara?
I sang at Mrs. Divine's funeral.
Did you now?
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, yeah. I was very close to her for a long time.
Where are you now?
Oh, yeah.
And what about, what's that Palmer lady's name?
Hazel Palmer.
Yeah, sure is.
She's dead.
Oh, she did.
She's dead. Yeah, she was from
So
New
all of
Jersey.
those ladies, so Miss Divine,
Well, there was
Miss
Miss
Fannie Lee.
Yeah.
Miss Fannie Lou, I love Miss Fannie Lou.
I buried her.
And then,
I did her funeral
Did
in
you?
the Delta in 1977.
and
Yeah. She was
see,
a
I
good
was,
friend.
and I was in the whirlwind somewhere.
Yeah.
I was in the
That
whirlwind.
was a very sad time for me. The family got mad with me because they wanted to put her back on the plantation. I wouldn't let them do it.
Oh, no, she
I wouldn't
certainly
let her
not
do
as
it.
hard as she fought to do it
Oh,
on the
yeah.
plantation.
But you see, they're, you know, family folks are funny, you know, because their family folks were buried on that plantation, and they felt that's where she should have been. And I said, no, symbolically, that's a terrible thing.
No, because she outgrew it. She outgrew that, and
Oh,
see,
of
she
course.
became larger than life. I mean,
Absolutely.
so that's, I mean, you can't do an outcome. See, the family has to realize that once a family member become larger than life, then they no longer belong to you, really.
True.
They really no longer belong to you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
belong to the world.
Yeah, they belong to the world.
Exactly
Yeah,
right.
they belong to the world. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they were good friends of mine. I remember, let's see. Well, I got a picture up there. I'll show it to you.
Yeah. But now, when we started, there is, if you go back to the, if you ever go back over there to the mega house,
Yes.
there is a picture in one of those rooms, and there's a picture of me. Meg is actually talking to some young man, it's like on a step or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I've often wondered, I told Minnie Watson that I want her to really tell me which magazine that picture come out of so that I could put it with time.
Oh, it came
I
out
don't
of
know
a
if it's the night that Meg actually, I do know that I was with Meg 15 minutes before his death. That much I know. So now I don't know if that picture was taken that night, or if that picture was taken at some other time, you know.
Mhm.
But that is the picture. So that's one of a few pictures that I can locate.
Do
of
you
myself.
remember, can you remember actually how you met Meg?
See, no, I don't. I just don't. I don't know if it was at a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I'm thinking, because it was Carolina, chances are it probably was through Carolina, but actually how, when, no, I don't. I just know that Megger was very, very close to the youth cancer, you know. I do know that he was, so I don't know if it probably was, chances are it was probably at a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it was through Carolina because he worked very closely with Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina and I lived almost right around the corner from each other, you know.
That's
went to the
Carolina
same,
Lewis,
yeah,
right?
we went to the same church. So we were all neighbors, Carolina, Cleveland, and we all grew up in the same neighborhood, Verdon Addition.
Verdon Addition.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that it had to be because Carolina, you know, was like a right-hand person. She worked very closely with Megger. Carolina, Willie Latin, those are the names that I remember in terms of, they were, well, first of all, they were much older than I.
Yeah,
Willie was older than I. And Cleveland and I about the same age, but Cleveland was so much more mature in terms of, so.
Do you ever hear from him?
We just touch base every once in a while. We were in New York, we once in a while, and
He's in Waterbury,
I
Connecticut.
think Cleveland, when I first came home, we talked, and he said we needed to get together because he was telling me about, I don't know if you talked to him, but I know he was telling me about people doing interviews. And
No, I
but
couldn't get to him.
He said, but he told me
Couldn't get him to answer when I called.
that he wanted to sit there and talk, because one of the things that we were concerned
I'd
about
love to see him.
was the
too.
misrepresentation, because I'm so glad that you all are doing this Jackson thing, because it seems that a lot of the energy was focused around just when Snick came, and that a lot of the stuff that went on, particularly in '63, that was the Jackson youth making that happen.
Yes, right.
The Jackson youth
62
movement.
and 63.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Jackson movement, the boycott.
Yeah. So,
went on quite a while.
and then he was a bit disenchanted because when I came back here, it was like, well, my God, people that I know, like Pearlina Lewis, she was like my, Pearlina, I looked at her as my leader, I mean, those were the people that got me involved in the movement, and I was like, well, where it happens, because even I've gone to some of these little church functions where they do Black history, and I'm like, what happened to these people that their names don't get mentioned, that a Cleveland Donald name doesn't get mentioned? And few people know that Cleveland Donald were actually the third Black person to go into Ole Miss. Yeah, Cleveland
That's
Donald.
I knew that.
Yeah, Cleveland Donald was actually the third. There was Meredith, and there was Cleve they found that gun, and expelled Cleve McDonald.
Right.
Yeah, and
he had a gun on.
Right.
Cleve did.
Yeah, Cleveland was even taking no stuff.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah. And then Cleveland Donald. But I don't know that did Cleveland graduate from Ole Miss? Cleveland, see, the NAACP moved Cleveland around a lot because he was so smart. And Cleveland didn't have to finish his last year of high school.
Oh, he did?
No.
He went right to college? Is it from the junior year?
Right. Once we did, we became, after we did, I think the summer of '63, then we went back to high school for our '63, '64, and that's when they had moved Cleveland from Brinkley. And they had him all over the place, so we kind of lost touch, but I remember he did his summer '64, he was back and very active, Yeah. But he's definitely a person that you need to talk
Oh,
to.
I really would.
I told you I would follow up on it. I
You
just
did.
asked my mama last night
Yeah.
if his mom was still in a nursing home, but she says she's home. I'd go by and see Miss Dawn. That'd give me a reason to go by and see her. And I'll get the information for you. But
Because I would go up there. I was in Connecticut, but I couldn't find him because I wasn't able to reach him by phone before I went up to Connecticut. I went to Connecticut to interview a couple of people, and I went also about the museum exhibit that I'm also on the board of, the Timbuktu exhibit. But I couldn't get.
for this museum here,
Yep,
what exhibit is that?
Timbuktu.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Did I show you the brochure?
You did not.
Remind me to show it to you.
And,
I will show it to you. I'm supposed to go to Timbuktu in the next, in the spring.
Now, what are you going
These-
to do with these interviews here?
These interviews are going to be transcribed. That's the first thing. And then they'll wind up in the archives. Okay.
So you're doing now, you're doing what Ole Miss is doing a lot of this.
No, this is not Ole Miss. This is.
No, I know it's not. I say that I'm glad that you're actually doing it, because when the Freedom Riders anniversary, Ole Miss did, they did a lot of oral history stuff.
Yes, that's true. I know that. Yeah. and you know that they wanted to, the Winter Institute wanted to get in on our conference.
Right.
You saw what the reaction of the
Right,
to
right.
that
And
was.
it's good. We do need to start documenting our own history.
We do.
We really need to start,
Absolutely.
because I think of all of the, when I think of just all the years that I've been from civil rights to human rights, you know, during my military years, and I just remember how the white folks were always, like, newsreel was big, and particularly when I was in, they have Google's information on us, and pictures, and they hoard that stuff also,
Exactly.
and make it very difficult for you to have access to, and we just very freely give it out to them.
That's
you know?
true.
Yeah.
You know, before I forget it, Frankie, would
What
you
time is it?
fill this out for me, please?
What time do you
It
have?
is 5 minutes after 12.
Oh, I guess then we probably about done our 2 hours, have we not?
Yes, we had done that too.
Oh, so I hope that was
Oh, it was great.
informative.
It was really great. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed your
I'm
story.
the woman with many names and many colors
That's
of
all right.
life.
You were born in Pocahontas.
Pocahontas.
I know where
Okay,
it is.
you know that
I have
the
been here,
Indian
Frankie.
princess Pocahontas. You know,
I
they
know
used
where
to
it is,
tease
right
us.
over
They
at
say that
West
we
County
were
Line
so
Road
far
there.
back up in the backwoods, you had to poke your way out, poke your way in and hunt your way out.
I love it.
Yes, I lived in Pocahontas.
What year were
Actually,
you born? Or you don't want to tell?
1945. I would love
Oh,
to
that's
tell
the year.
every bit
You
of
know that's the
my-
year I graduated high school.
What you mean that's the year you graduated high school? In 45?
45.
You're older than my mom.
Yep.
You're probably older than my mom. How old are you?
77.
No, my mom is. Well, wait a minute. So how you graduated high school in 45?
I graduated at 16. I was born in 1928.
But my mama had me in 45 though.
Well, nothing wrong with that. She was young.
Wait a minute. You say you graduated. Okay, now I get the picture. Okay. So she's older. Right. Okay, now I have it.
You got it?
Now I have it. Now I have it.
I went in the Korean War in 1951.
What do you want me to sign this thing?
Yeah,
Fill
where it
this-
says signature, please.
I just put FAJ.
Yeah.
Okay, 601-368-9562 is my telephone number. F. Malika. You know I have another name, right?
No.
My.
I knew you
I know,
originally as Frankie Adams in the history that I read of the Jackson movement, and then when I met you through.
I'm Frankye Adams Johnson, but I have
I
an
know.
Islamic name also.
No, I didn't know that.
I'm Malika.
Malika.
Yes, yes. I'm also, when I introduce myself as a poet, as my creative self,
Yes.
I introduce myself like this. I'm the woman of many names, many colors, and many lives.
That's
Okay. I am Mississippi Frankie May and New York Malika.
Frankie May. Frankie May.
The Frankie May Adams.
Uh-huh.
Frankie May Adams. There's only 2 of us Frankies in high school.
Mm. Mm-mm.
Yes.
Let's see now.
Oh, so I enjoyed you being at your church folks had drafted me.
Did you like being there?
Yeah, I like the smallness, but I'm concerned. What about children? You don't have children?
You know, I've only been singing with them for 2 years, I guess.
So do you belong to that church?
Well, I'm an Episcopalian, but I don't belong to that. I don't belong to that church.
Oh.
See, I was an Episcopalian in Boston.
Well, you have to tell
Because
me
my
about it.
folks
My
were
daughter's
West
an
Indians.
Episcopalian.
Oh,
yeah.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, my oldest daughter. I have a daughter that I did not raise, and she's come back into my. She was actually adopted, and
Oh,
we reunited a few years back.
Oh, wonderful.
And she's Episcopalian.
where does she live?
She lives in Alabama. I'm actually
Oh, in
going
Alabama?
there for my for Thanksgiving. I
What
had
part?
a dinner with her, Birmingham.
Birmingham.
She's very brilliant. She's a
She's
PhD in computer science.
Oh,
So
really?
you know she's yeah, one of the few black women that actually had a doctorate in computer science.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
she's had a big time grant from NASA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she's hot stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, so.
My youngest daughter works in the Space Administration
Really?
in Houston.
Really?
And that's where I'm going for Thanksgiving.
How old is she?
Let me see. She was born in 73, so she's 32.
Oh, I have to tell Miranda that I know somebody
And
has
my-
a daughter working in space.
Oh, yeah, my oldest daughter teaches.
How many daughters do you have?
I have four.
You have sons?
One.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have four daughters. And the oldest one, I went to her daughter's graduation from college in Ohio. I always forget the name of that school. Well, anyhow, we went to her graduation in Ohio in May. Right outside of Cleveland. That school was on the Underground Railroad. Yeah, it was quite a history, but my oldest daughter teaches there. And her daughter attended there and graduated from there this last May. So she is teaching now in a Native American reservation in South Dakota.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
she's quite taken with that job. She loves that. And I have another daughter in New York.
Which part?
City, Brooklyn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she
That's
lives.
where
Well, she
my,
lives two places because she's a business lady.
Uh-huh.
She has a business in Phoenix, and also a home in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
And
my
she goes back and
sons,
forth.
my sons are still in New York. My baby daughter just came here, and I don't know. I wish that she just seemed like, I don't know if when I was carrying her, I was a wild woman in a whirlwind. If she,
Well, it rubs off you.
I think so.
Oh,
because
definitely. Now you
she
think it
just
does.
can't
Oh, yes.
seem to settle down, and it really bothers me because she has a little girl also.
She has a little girl.
And I want to break this cycle. Yes. Because it has to stop somewhere. Because otherwise, then a little girl will pick up her bad habits, and then it will continue on and on and on. So I'm trying to get her to say, listen to Mom, who is paid all these dues to become this very wise person. But we each have our journeys in life, and so I'm just praying that she will just be all right.
She'll be
She's
okay.
talking about every time things get a little rough for her, she's talking about taking flight and going back to New York.
Oh, really? Where was she at?
She's here with me.
Oh, she's here with you.
She doesn't live with me. She was living with me.
Uh-huh.
But she wants to be grown. Well, she is grown.
She
She's
is?
31.
Oh, she's grown. Hey, you can't make decisions for her anymore. What do you think this is?
Well, I don't want to make decisions for her, but I wish
Well,
she
that's
would
the way
learn.
they-
She's spinning her wheels.
That's the way they look at it, you know.
I actually started getting my act together. I was hoping that if she's going to follow my pattern, be wild in her 20s, but in your 30s, my God, it's time to start looking. That's when it took me, but 20, it was almost like when I became 29, it's almost like the apple fell out of the sky and smacked me upside of my head. So,
Yeah, but that's you. That ain't her.
I know, but I thought maybe it had to do with this age
She
thing.
got to make her own way.
I think what happened, see, my mama just let me go after a while. See, I think I've tried to shelter her too much. See, after a while, my mama turned me over. She'll tell anybody. If you ever interview her, she'll say, I gave that child up to the Lord. When I came to New York, she said, I came to New York, all I wanted to know was she was all right.
All right.
And
safe.
once I found out
Just wanted to
she
be
was
safe.
all right, say I went back home and say, Lord, is she your child? She stopped staying up all night worrying about me because my mama wasn't here for me for years to go by.
Now, I understand that.
Yeah.
My mother died at 104.
Really, for the right
Yep.
age.
And I left Mississippi, I left to come to Mississippi 41 years ago. She died 2 years ago, and she could never figure out why I came to Mississippi. My mother. She could
Well,
never.
why did you come to Mississippi?
The movement.
See, I tell you, that movement sure get in your blood and it just
Gets
go,
in your
right?
blood.
It just gets in your blood, and I tell you still, I came here and I said, I don't even know how to just be a mainstream person anymore, because my life is
Frankie, you ought to cut it off.
I really don't.
You don't know how to
And
be
it
a
just shows, honestly, even when I'm trying to be very conservative and like the rest of the folks, that somehow I stand out like a sore thumb, and I don't know even, I like the funniest experience.
Well,
When I was
who you want to be? Anybody? You want to be somebody besides
No,
who you are?
that's why, no, I